We just stepped on their face with a hobnail boot and broke their nose. The way to the end zone, and Georgia is going to conquer the Crimson Tide.
So how about them fucking dogs? That's what I told them.
Hope it doesn't take that long again. Go Dogs.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 100 Sanford podcast. You are here with your boy Lamar Lovelace and Mr. George Foster. We are in the building. It is time to get it on and popping tonight. Big G, what's going on?
What's crack-a-lacking?
Everything is
What's
everything, bro. Everything
like
is
I
everything.
Say every week. Like I say every week. I woke up this morning. The Dogs won last week. I'm good.
Everything is everything. It was a good victory last week, obviously. Beating Florida, shutting them down, doing what we do. 42-20. I think a lot of people really felt like it should have been a lot worse, could have been a lot worse. A couple blown assignments, some things that they got to clean up for next week. But everything is good down at the cocktail party and being able to trash Florida like we always do and trash those guys, especially our guys from the Roll Up Network and anybody else that was chirping on the side talking about Florida was going to get some type of upset. They must have been out there cotton picking lines.
Hey, man, they try to get any type of hope they can muster up. You know what I mean? So I don't blame them. I roll with my dogs all the time. I would hope they roll with theirs, but we all knew what was going to happen.
Come on, man. Max been a little quiet. He ain't said nothing since.
Hey, I ain't even fool with Max. I ain't even fool with him. He knew what was going to happen too. Everybody knew what was going to happen. So we didn't get a lot of trash talk. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So it was what it was. I can't even be mad.
Yeah, man. What else you do this past week, man? Everything been good? You and the family, everything good?
Everything been good, man. Did a little media this week. Got a chance to hop on Thinking Out Loud, which was changed to Screaming Out Loud with being that it was Halloween with Spencer and company over there on SEC Network. That was good. Got a chance to talk some trash with Peerless Price, an old SEC Tennessee foe. He was part of much sorrow for me my freshman year when we were like number 7 and they were, they was top 3 maybe. Right. And they whooped us real good in between the hedges. And I remember every bit of it. So I'm ready for get back in this top 5, this top 3 matchup.
Well, see, at least back then, you knew that Tennessee team was going to be some type of foe going into the season, right? I mean, they had those dudes. But when you look at this year's Tennessee team, a team that started off a little bit outside, well, for some rankings, right outside the top 20, anywhere from 21 to 24. It was a team that you could tell that was going to get better. And I don't know if you remembered. I know that's probably why Graham can't make it tonight, because he says he's doing film work. But I told everybody as the season started, I said my sleeper team was going to be Tennessee. And I said that was going to be the team that we was going to have to deal with going towards the end of the season. I didn't think they would be undefeated, but I thought that they would be a team that could definitely give a lot of people some issues, some concerns just with their offense. You could tell as the season went on last year that Hooker got better. He got more comfortable in the offense. He's a guy with a lot of starts going all the way back to Virginia Tech, his ability to play there and then transferring. And it was just getting comfortable. And you could tell even when we played them last year, when we played them in Tennessee, that they were a team that was trying to get their legs underneath them, but there was no possible way that anybody was going to beat that dog team from last year. I mean, way too much talent that there was no way they were going to compete. But I ain't going to toot my own horn because I don't even really want it to be like that this week. But I knew Tennessee was going to be a team that's going to be on the come up.
Man, they started out against us, nice little first drive last year, and then Kirby turned on the Jets.
Yeah.
I'm still interested in. I'll be interested. We got a guest later from the Volunteer Nation. I'm interested to hear his opinion, because I've had a question this whole time for. Okay, so they essentially have. I don't know who all they added, as far as through the portal or whatever, but they essentially have the same team offensively from last year. The top dogs, the quarterback, their 2 top receivers, they got those. Same team as last year in that regard. Same coach, same system, all of that. Although Hooker was just now being thrust into the system last year. I want to know what makes them, other than being undefeated up to this point, what makes them so hopeful that they would just come in and demolish the Dogs, because they're talking heavy. You know what I mean? Nobody's, they like the fan base is talking real heavy. You know what I mean? So I want to know what's the difference, because we smacked them around last year. Now if anything, we don't have the same team, so to speak. We had 15 guys go get drafted.
Right.
But I want to know what's so much better about their team this year that they feel like they're gonna, take care of the Dogs handily. And so I want to get our guests' opinion on that, because I feel like there isn't that much difference. How could there be that much difference? Same team, same coach, same, players, although, pretty darn good players, on offense, but we handled them. It was just, the scheme took care of it. So I'm interested in hearing that.
I got to hear it too, because usually, when you go from week to week, you try to do a little film work, you try to read up on some teams, you try to go back and look at how you played them previously within the last year or two, especially with Kirby and his system. But like you said, Tennessee Vol fan has been coming out the woodwork. Literally, they think they're going to march in to Athens and just demolish Georgia. And I can understand. Okay, I can understand from a fan standpoint. If I was a Vol fan and I'm looking at my offense being able to score at will, literally score at will on most teams, right? There's nobody they have not really been able to put up a lot of points against. I would feel confident too. I would say, okay, I feel like we got the offense that can match Georgia. I feel like, look, we played the big bad Alabama, took them down, even though Alabama put up, 46 or 49 points, something like that. I can understand that. But there comes a time where it's like a healthy respect. You know what I'm saying, G? Like, there's a healthy respect of your opponent. And that's the thing that's driving me crazy. You said it better than anybody, which was, Coach, they on scholarship too. And you would think fans would sit there and say, well, dang, they on scholarship too. This is the defending national champion. It ain't like you playing some slouch. You're playing Kirby Smart, who's the architect of Alabama's great defenses during their run. So are you trying to tell me with Muschamp on the coaching staff, with the young Schumann on the coaching staff, who's an up and coming star, who one day will be a top head coach, that this team can't devise something to slow down what some people think is a juggernaut? To me, it's just asinine thinking, and that's why I want to get our guest opinion on that too, because these jokers just come out the woodwork, out the caves, talking about they're going to drag the Dogs.
Well, everyone, they're excited about the Heisman hopeful Hendon Hooker, and he's indeed a Heisman hopeful. Can't deny the numbers. They don't respect Stetson. That's the gist. That's what I've been getting. They don't respect him. They just, and they're just going off what they've done so far this season. And man, they just like you said, I don't think they have a healthy respect for the Dogs. Being that they run the ball more than anybody, and that's a strength of ours, stopping the run. So what I don't, they run the ball 58% of the time. That's not a recipe to beat us. If we're just being honest.
Right.
If you want to do that, so, hey, so be it. But that's not a recipe to beat Georgia. So they gotta figure something else out. It's gonna be a chess match, I believe. But nothing about what Kirby has been able to do over the last 5 years or so tells me that he won't come up with something, and the coaches on the staff won't come up with something to stop them this year. So I can't wait for the game. It's gonna be pandemonium. I'm trying to get up there early, find some parking, man, and just have a good time. Yeah, I hope we put them away early.
Well, for the fans going to the game, including yourself, right now it shows going to be about 77 degrees, about 30% rain, opportunity for rain. So hopefully it doesn't rain up there. I mean, heck, it could help, Georgia as a running team and being able to utilize our run game and our tight ends. But
I like our run game over theirs.
Oh yeah, facts.
If you want to line up and get dirty in the trenches, we can do that.
Well, you know what?
if you want to do that, we could do that. Even though they run the ball more, I don't like their front against our front pounding it out.
All right, I'm gonna throw something at you because that's funny that you say that, and I'm gonna bring this up right now. So first of all, game one, and I don't like to put a lot of onus on previous games, especially like early in the season, but they did play Pitt. Slovis and Patty, the quarterbacks, they passed for 280, but Abenikonda ran for 154, including the big 74-yard touchdown run, right? Mm-hmm. Pitt really was neutralizing and controlling that game. Even though Tennessee was up at halftime, Pitt had taken control of that game, even with Slovis on the bench because Slovis had gotten hurt. But people don't remember that Pitt's interior linemen, defensive linemen, also went out of that game, and they were getting the hooker and kind of disrupting him. That's the first thing. But then you got a Florida game, because that's a team that people looked at and they said, well, dang, Florida went up there and almost handled Tennessee, almost took down Tennessee. Richardson, do people realize Richardson threw for 453? Mm-hmm. 453. And they ran for, over 160 yards. And that's a Florida team that we put a stranglehold on last week. I mean, literally could have beaten them worse.
Without a few those mistakes we made, that interception that was just bonkers. And we still we covered.
Right. You know what I mean? Like I think it kind of comes back to this. When people look at Georgia this year, they look at the optics of how things. They look at games like the Kent State game, the Missouri game, the Vanderbilt game, and they say, okay, a Tennessee team would have put 60 on them, 70 on them. That's not what Georgia did in those games. Georgia put up whatever they put up. They had self-inflicted wounds, and I think even from a Tennessee fan aspect, I think that's what they're looking at. I think that's what the national narrative is looking at. They're looking at it like, okay, this isn't the same team that just would have hung up 50 last year and then, held teams to 3 points. So therefore it can't be the same team. But you got to look at it this way. Those are self-inflicted wounds every time against teams that some other teams would have struggled against if they had those self-inflicted wounds. Georgia never slipped. There was never a game that was ever in doubt when you saw the Dogs. Tennessee had 2 games that were in doubt. 2.
That is very true.
2. So I don't care what their fans say. I don't care what the national narrative says. I don't care what anybody says. Georgia's really the only team that it really hasn't had any struggles with any team that they played thus far, including Ohio State, who almost took an L to Penn State last week had it not been for a couple, again, self-inflicted wounds by Penn State.
Yeah, I don't think like Tennessee has a high-powered offense. We already know that. Low-powered defense. So I don't see them stopping us. It's just a matter of us stopping them enough times to come out victorious in the end. Because at the end of the day, all we want to do is win.
Facts.
You know what I mean? They're the number one team in the country. Tennessee, as far as the
college football playoff
goes, they're the number one team in the country. So if we win by half a point, we won. We beat the number one team in the country, no matter how you cut it. You know what I mean? They're supposed to be big bad Tennessee right now. So, they're the hunted. You know what I mean? So, if you bag them, you bag them. So it doesn't matter how much you beat them by. You know what I mean? The goal is to beat them, and we move on to the next one.
Well, you know what? I want to kind of transition to that because you brought up the big bad offense, and literally all I did for the last few days, because I want to get off social media. I was tired of just seeing Tennessee fan. Everybody else responding to them. I can't respond to those jokers. They ain't rational. There was only one lady that was rational. Today, she actually bought me lunch when I was working. She found me in line or breakfast, and she said, who's going to win this week? And I said, the Dawgs, of course. And she said, well, I can't really say that since I'm a Tennessee fan, but I like to buy you breakfast. I was like, for real? I mean, you're the only rational fan that's out there, when treat the Dawgs nice and respect. But besides that, I mean, I've been doing a lot of film work, just watching this team play. From a defensive standpoint, what would you do against this Tennessee offense? What would you employ as a defensive coordinator if you're coming into this game?
I think that front four is going to be, really the front, 7 is going to be important. You know what I mean? You have to first of all stop the run, and I would say throw the timing off on those routes. They stack those receivers to try to confuse you, and I believe obviously our staff knows that. You just have to throw off their timing. Slow them down. They thrive off getting down the field quickly, scoring quickly. We gotta take care of that. So you gotta disrupt the routes. Get Hooker off his square. Can't let him get loose because he's elusive. He can rush the ball himself. Mm-hmm. So we got to take care of that. And I think having Jalen back, the emergence of getting Bear on the field, you know what I mean. I was happy to see Ingram back last week. Yeah. So that was big. He's a key piece that hadn't been around for a little while. So I'm confident. I think that front four is going to have to play their butt off.
All right, I'm going to throw something at you. I mean, you're an NFL vet, scout. Okay. Every time I saw Tennessee on film against anybody this year, including the Dawgs last year, everybody tried to match up man for man with them. Again, putting 5 or 6 in the box, a spy maybe as a linebacker or a safety coming down into the box, but then matching up man for man. I went back to that Georgia tape. You can do that. You know what I mean? You got guys, I mean, all over the field that went to the NFL. You remember, Graham probably wouldn't remember this. Trey wouldn't remember this. But do you remember the Running Rebels?
You're talking about Larry Johnson, George Apples, Stacey Augman.
Yes.
Greg Anthony.
Yes, sir.
And
Tark the Shark running that thing.
Yeah, Jerry Tarkanian.
Yes, George Eccles. All those boys that were running with those boys. Even Georgetown, when they had their exclusive defenses that would choke people out, they weren't playing a lot of man-to-man. I mean, they were playing they were mixing it up. Zones. And I mentioned UNLV because they got that amoeba defense that they created. That it looked like it was man-to-man, but it really wasn't man-to-man, and then all of a sudden it would morph into something else. I believe this Georgia defense is going to come out with something similar to that, where it's going to look like a lot of man-to-man coverage, but a lot of fire blitzes, a lot of things like you mentioned, throwing them off their routes. But I think some things with throwing them off their routes is just disguising some things that most teams can't do. I think Kirby even mentioned it in the press conference. They don't allow you to get time in between snaps to actually employ your defense that you want to do, right? That's why the crowd's going to be so effective and needing to be so effective in Athens. But right. I think that if they go cover 6, they go cover 9, they do a lot of spying on this on Tennessee, it's going to cause a lot of issues for Hooker in that offense. Because if you look at it, a lot of their big plays are coming down the sideline, blown coverages. If you look at that, even going back to last year when the Dogs gave up a couple big shots, again, downfield. Or they're quick slants for like maybe 7 or 8 yards to kind of keep the momentum of the team going. And like you mentioned, then those halfback draws, or Hennon gets out of containment and runs through the A gap, and defenses give up that containment. That's what I would do. What's your thoughts on that?
I think the advantage that Georgia probably has is, one, I don't think Tennessee can't recreate what Georgia's going to throw at them defensively in their practices. So there's going to be some stuff they haven't seen. I'm sure Georgia has been working on this for weeks. I'm hearing they've been putting in 15, 16-hour days, in that office, prepping for Tennessee. And it's just it's the defense is intricate. It's a lot going on the defense. And that's why it takes guys, a minute to get acclimated. It takes guys a minute to get on the field, because it's a lot. You know what I mean? It's a lot for that defense, but it's also a lot for the opponent. You know what I mean? So I just plan on them playing just sound football. If you have to bend a little bit, just don't break. But it's gonna be wonderful, man. I have confidence in the defense. I'm really gonna be missing Nolan, though. There's gonna have to be some. There's gonna have to be some stepping up. Somebody's gonna have to make a name for themselves this game.
Yeah, I mean, this is the game that people make those names, right? Those big-time names for them. Even if you go back to the beginning of the year, you had Malachi Starks with the big-time interceptions, right? Nobody would have known anything about Malachi unless he balls out that first game against Oregon, by the way, which is not lost since that first game of the year. So people want to talk about Georgia's resume and Bo Nix out there balling. But this is that type of game where somebody's going to make a name for themselves. And in my opinion, I think that guy's going to be Pop Dumas Johnson. There's no doubt in my mind. If you go back and look at that game last year, you look at Dean, captain of the defense, roaming all over that field, making plays all over the field. They're using him on blitz schemes. They're using him spying. And I think Pop is that type of dude that does not blow any type of assignment, gets guys in alignment. It's a good thing to get Munden back, who was healthy last week. He's fast and all over the field. Again, going sideline to sideline, those guys being able to spy, either one of those guys being able to spy. But I'm with you. I think the missing piece of this defense is Nolan. He doesn't have the big-time sack numbers. He doesn't have the big-time tackle numbers, but he means so much in terms of setting that edge, forcing guys to bounce back inside into the teeth of the defense. He's huge. He's huge. And I know Kirby, has his thoughts on who should be utilized, regardless of what we think. I think Chaz Chambliss came in last week. You got the young boys out there, Sherman that people have talked about, the freshman. But I think the other guy's got to step up as Bill. He's got to step up. He's the senior. He came back for this reason, for this opportunity to kind of shine as a sack leader. He's the guy that's got to step up. But I think the key to this defense is really going to be that interior defensive line, like you talked about. All four of those guys kind of getting off, and those middle linebackers, because there's a lot that they can do. Also, with the fact that people forget Chris Smith is still back there. The other Smith at safety, Ringo, and I think Ringo's going to be a guy that has a big day too. I don't think there's going to be a lot of press man coverage with Ringo that people are anticipating, even though he can body up boys. But Ringo's ability to play against the run is outstanding, and that's something that's missed. And I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to this.
We're going to have to tackle really well.
Yeah.
We're going to have to tackle really well. And that's, it's been a strong point of us for this team ever since the staff has been here. Been tackling very well. We don't let a lot of stuff go unless a lucky explosive play. But those guys tend to get ball carriers on the ground.
Yeah. And for those who don't know, Nolan Smith will be out with the pec injury. He's lost for the season. Not only that, Dan Jackson, that's another little nugget of a tough guy to miss. Dan Jackson's played a lot of ball, man. And I think that he's a guy that can, he's great on special teams. He's great as a supplemental player on that defense who's smart. He may not be the fastest guy out there, but he knows his assignments, doesn't miss his assignments. That's another hurting piece. But when you switch to the offensive side of the ball, you got A.D. Mitchell, who still is not back yet, which I think was probably out of everybody on the offense this year, he's truly the missing piece. I think he's a guy that can do so much for you offensively at the wide receiver position. And then you also have Amarius Mims, who I believe has a knee injury. I'm not sure if he's playing or if he practiced today. I didn't check with Kirby's press conference to find out about Mims. But
I haven't checked much about personnel this week. So AD is still not back yet, right?
Still not back yet. Smith is, which is the burner. Obviously he got the wheels. He can roll.
Definitely.
I think another guy that can be utilized a lot and should be utilized a lot more going into this week is Blaylock. Safe hands, a lot of things you don't have to worry about with him. You're not going to have any blown assignments, routes, and things like that. He's just a technician. So I'm looking forward to him playing this week.
With the emergence of we should have Milton back, right?
Yeah. Kendall practiced this week. He practiced.
So having Milton back with Branson and with Dejon, we might be able to have McIntosh doing what he does so well as a receiver as well this week. You know what I mean? So, having a full backfield, full complement of backs, we may be able to use him out there as well.
Go back and look at last year's game. I mean, what was one of the most effective pieces? It was Cook, right? You had Zeus that was back there. You had Milton that was back there in the backfield. You had McIntosh that was back there in the backfield. But you had James Cook, who they were able to use basically as a supplemental wide receiver. He had over 100 yards rushing, over 100 yards receiving. There was nothing that Tennessee's linebackers could do with him. And you mentioned, having Kendall back. I think a lot of people have kind of moved on. Fan base has, a lot of them. I'd probably say 60 to 70% saying, hey, Edwards is that dude, Branson is that dude. But in a game like this, and when you get down towards the middle of the pack and the end of the season, you want as many healthy running backs as you could possibly get to be able to take that pounding, to be able to wear down the defense, really to keep Tennessee's defense on the field and wear them down and just grind their defensive line out. But then being able to use, like you said, use McIntosh the way he really is effective as the best pass-catching running back out of the field, allowing Monken to dial up some things and maybe kind of stretch that defense and use those tight ends throughout the middle of the field, because Tennessee has a problem with tight ends. It don't matter who they played. They've given up a lot of yardage to tight ends. Bartholomew from Pitt, the old boy from Alabama got off on him. Heck, I don't even know old boys from Florida's name, but he got off as well. They've given up a lot of yards to the tight ends, and that's one of the strengths of this team is the tight end.
That won't change this weekend. I'll tell you that much. Our tight ends have been phenomenal. Big O, Brock Bowers, man, that's a formidable tandem that I don't see them covering. Like I said, we just got to stop them. they're not going to stop us. Like that's, they've proven that they can't really stop anybody.
Oh,
you know what I mean? So, but we just have to stop them. Yeah, you heard me.
I felt like,
they haven't stopped anybody.
There's a saying that a hit dog a hollering. We ain't really screaming, okay? I'm hearing a lot of barking, but eventually that bark got to turn into a bite. Okay,
hold up a second,
Lamar. Who we got to join the?
Hold up a second, because we ain't gonna let them just join our show, coming in here and wreck shop.
It
ain't gonna happen, Foz. I'm telling you.
Get your frat, Lamar.
I'm gonna get him. I'm gonna put him in the cut.
That's your OG right there.
It is, and I always respect that. You hear me? Always.
Hey, folks, we got a guest in the building. We got Ramon Foster, ex-Tennessee Vol himself, Pittsburgh Steeler, NFL vet, radio personality, and one of my dear frat brothers from Rogue. So, what's going on, Ramon?
Not much, man. That's a heck of an introduction right there. That's an old man right there, because I know that's hard. I'm in a group chat right now, okay, with a bunch of dogs just talking a whole lot, okay? It's you know what? I'll say this. It's good to be a part of the club. Is all I'm saying, man. We're finally getting a seat at the table, man. It's been a while. Okay?
You did.
I can acknowledge
what I mean? That's why, it's getting a little annoying. I can't lie. It's getting just a little. But at the same time, when you've been sitting at the kid table,
so
long, and you finally get to sit with the big folks, you know what I mean? You want to grab the chicken. You want the big piece. You know what I mean? You want the good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? You ain't gotta sit and eat beanie weenies with the kid at the kid table no more. You know what I'm saying? You get to get some of the good stuff. You know what I mean? So I get it. I understand. But man, I can't wait till Saturday.
Me too. Let me just say, this is just where we at. I feel like we walking in everybody's house, not only sitting at the big table, but grabbing a bottle. You feel me? Grabbing a real cup, not a plastic one.
Okay.
That's I feel like that's the vibe. But I'll say this though, okay, and this is what I'm trying to get people to understand. I had a nice little exchange on my show with one of my co-hosts, because I'm just explaining to him, like, all right, we've been there before. Me personally playing there, but like, imagine, you know how it is in that locker room, losing to Florida, losing to Georgia. Here, man, we not y'all rival. We don't look at y'all as rivals. And when you finally get that opportunity to be like, okay, not only is this good, but I feel like this is sustainable. And I almost look at it in the sense of like the LSU resurgence with Burrow and everything. Even if they do take a dip, you understand that the brand is still there. Heck, with the Tennessee Vols, like the brand fell off. Like, let's be real about that.
That's the thing. The brand did fall off, and but like you said, it's looking sustainable. Just say they take a hit this weekend.
Right.
It's still sustainable. You're gonna have to get the key to being a juggernaut in college football, and definitely the SEC, is going to be what you have behind the first team.
Yep.
So Tennessee's going to have to. They're going to definitely have to, keep recruiting, get the depth, but it's sustainable. There's a system that's sustainable. It's just a matter of recruiting from now on, and so it's gonna be good. If Florida can turn the corner, it's gonna start looking like the '90s again.
Oh, you feel me? Or my early 2000s, to where. And I said this before, like, we beat Florida for the last time in 2004 when I was there. And when Herb came in, they just took off. I think that era of Herb, I think Mark Richt, I think Saban coming in, and who else am I missing? Who was at LSU? That came in and won a natty real quick. Well, Saban won one. Yeah. I think with Urban specifically and Nick coming in, let's just use them two. They came in and flipped the SEC on his head and really won like natties within like the first couple of years, and they put a whole lot of heat on a bunch of coaches. Mark Richt was one of those guys that you just say, well, Herb came in and got us two. Yeah, you're getting the same recruits as they are. And I think the same thing goes for watching what Saban did at Alabama. And ever since then, it's just been a whirlwind. I say this about y'all, though, Georgia. Between y'all and Ohio State, nobody's been more steady than those two programs as far as when Ohio State had a dip, and I feel like y'all may have had 1 year of a dip. Everybody else.
You say that, and you know this because you're a football guy. I looked it up 1 year. I went back and looked at the last 50 years of Georgia football. You know, they might have had 10 seasons with 7 or less wins.
See what I'm saying?
Like that's like some teams are killed for that. Mississippi State would love to.
Arkansas,
you know, eight or better every year.
Yeah, look at what Texas got going on. We hear so much about Texas all the time, but look at what Texas really has done. Nothing.
Right.
You feel me?
And Georgia just been steady. They just couldn't get over the hump until last year. You know, almost. My senior year, we lost 1 game to Florida. That we ended at number 3. But then there was no playoff. So, you know, we're out. We're out.
Yeah.
If you're number 3, you're out. You know, Kirby went to the Natty in year 2.
Yeah.
That close. You know, that close. Devontae Smith broke our heart.
Yeah.
You know, and then he finally got over the hump last year. But like I tell people all the time, like Georgia in my lifetime hasn't. They might have been bad once or twice.
Yeah.
I'm 42.
Yeah. Think about that.
You know what I mean? They've been bad maybe once or twice. When I say bad, I mean bad. You know,
7.
6-game win.
Yeah.
6. So 8, like Jim Donnan, Jim Donnan got fired winning 8-9 games.
See what I'm saying?
You know, they got him out the paint.
Yeah.
You know, they got Coach Rick out the paint. Coach Rick was an automatic 10.
And that's what I'm saying. Like, and a part of me, again, I'm petty like that. Okay, I just got to throw that out there for y'all. Okay, a portion of me is really looking forward to the day that Bama take that pendulum swing to the other side. Just simply because the idea of the way Saban has come in and wrecked shop for over a decade, in the world of like sports balance, it really ain't normal. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like the reality, like the last like 15 plus years, they have been on top. And I'm not saying, look, if Alabama's good, it's good for college sports in general. Same way as Georgia and Florida and just Notre Dame, also Ohio State, USC, Texas, also Oklahoma. But in the world of like really just being king of the hill, in this era of the way the athlete is built, the way coaches and offense, like it ain't been a normal ride for what Bama has done. And I say that in appreciation of how they've been able to do it too. Like to be that organization at school for that long, you got to respect it. But it's a matter of every single year, top preseason top 5 is who? Bama +1. You know what I'm saying? Like that's what it's been. So
see, but now we're that +1.
Well, no, legitimate. I'm glad y'all are like watching y'all. I ain't gonna lie to you. I was cheering my head off for y'all in that natty because I'm like, just unseat them. That's all I'm looking for.
Unseat them.
One chink in the armor, baby. Like, where is that iceberg at? That's all I was like, where is that iceberg in the middle of the ocean?
Well, you know what? Before the season started, I mean, I actually said that Tennessee was going to be that up and coming team.
Yeah.
One of our hosts was not on. He don't want to be on. Because he already knows I said that Tennessee was going to be there and they were going to be a challenge to Georgia this year. Are you surprised with what Tennessee's done this year in year 2 under Heupel?
I'm going to be real. I was very hesitant to say what Heupel was going to be. I knew this. I said this. I said, I like what the offense is. And you got to be realist. You got to be a realist about what college football is turning into. I think almost every defensive juggernaut in the SEC has kind of accepted the fact that they got to be okay with giving up 24 points a game or whatever the case may be because the game has changed that much. And I knew if we had an offense and a quarterback that can get everything together, we would be okay. I did 2 separate predictions for us. I said 9-3, and I said like 8-4. That's where I was. Just being completely honest with you. Because I didn't know what the OL was going to be. Lost a couple guys on the offensive line. The defense, I heard George talking about that as I came on here. Just wondering what the defense can do against Florida, against LSU, against Alabama.
Mm-hmm. Who did you figure would give Tennessee problems though? You said 3 losses. You said 4 losses. Who did you figure those teams would be?
I said LSU because I didn't know what they were going to be, and Brian Kelly was there, which proved me wrong, but they're top 10 right now. Bama, Georgia. That was my 9-3 season. On my 8-4 season, I had either the Pitt game or Florida game, and I think that's fair to say.
Yeah. So, I don't know much about Pitt. You know, I don't know if I would have thought of Florida, but you know, I don't know much about Pitt. I had a question for you.
Okay.
You know, being that you're a football guy, I trust your analysis on this. So, Georgia played Tennessee last year, like every year. You had Hooker, although a new insert into the offense. Yeah. But you still had Hyatt, and you had Tillman last year. Yeah. You know, basically your top 3 offensive players. Yep. And they came out, you know, against Georgia, went down the field, scored. Yeah. You know, I had one of my best friend, you know, we chatting during the game. He's like, it's going to take a few series to figure it out, and then they won't be able to do anything else. Yeah. And, you know, and he's a football coach, and I'll be doing it went just like that. He was like, it took a little minute to figure them out, and then, you know, it was curtains. Mm-hmm. What makes this year different from last year when you have essentially the same offense, the same top 3 guys? Why, you know, other than being undefeated, you know, like you have to have confidence in the undefeated team. Other than being undefeated, other than Tennessee being undefeated, what makes it different in the fact that so many people think that Tennessee's just going to go in there and dog walk Georgia when it didn't happen last year with the same offense, same you know, weapons. What's different in your eyes? What's different is last year, like, taking over that team from what Jeremy Pruitt had at that. Like, that was a fractured, like, team. Like, legitimately, like, it was – some of them dudes, man, said it felt like they was going to work. You know what I'm saying? So, getting over that and actually believing that they could play, like, a lot of them dudes, like, it's been interviews with guys on that team right now said that they didn't even talk to their teammates. Like, it was like they didn't know the dude on the other side of the locker. They were just there to do a job, and that was just that. Hypo came in and broke that up. But just on the field play, too, I think what they did this offseason – Hendon actually gaining confidence and playing a whole lot better and understanding that system too. And this is the part too when it came down to the Georgia game. The Georgia game was 2 things. Y'all stopped the run, which Jordan Davis, what you going to do? How many first rounders you have on the defensive line in the front 7? You see what I'm saying? You had that to actually stop the run. And then after you get behind the chains and you get a 3 and out, you get another 3 and out, and it's like, okay, everything has changed. If you look at Tennessee's offense in general this year, why everything has changed, it's the running game. Them dudes, they hit Alabama for 187. There's other teams in the league that hit for 200. Other SEC teams. Florida was another one they controlled the run game with. So, like, it's cute with the way the passing and watching Jalen Hyatt go down the sideline. But if you really pay attention to the games, they are moving the ball, and they're doing it in a way that they're keeping defenses out there. They're not changing personnel. You know how no huddle go. Heck, I love no huddle, man, as a player, because we can pace ourselves. The defense has to run to the ball, and if they get 4 on first down, they can throw the ball, they can run it again, and then having the ability to honestly control the sticks. The one game in which they had some problems was the overtime game against Pitt. Pitt blitzed them like heck, okay? They lit them up as far as getting there, and they kept them behind the 6. I think they only had like 93 yards on the ground, and that was probably the most challenging game defensively that this offense has seen, simply because the run game couldn't get on schedule. And then, of course, on the second end of the season, I feel like you've seen this defense, whether they're giving up a whole lot of yards or not, it's still stopping teams really well in the red zone. I think they're top 5 as far as defense when it comes down to the red zone and scoring in the SEC. It's a lot of yards given,
but it's also a bend but don't break mentality as far as opportunities and turnovers and stopping the big play down the field. That's been a determining factor when it comes down to it. Like, to have a potential, as Mel Kiper had him on his list, top 5 still, Will Levis, to have him be under 100 yards passing, I don't think that's all offensive. So, like, again, it's a bunch of smoke and mirrors because you look at the way guys are streaking down the sideline. But it's really a heavy run game, and it's a defense that's gradually gotten better. And every year they've had a guy. Last year was Malcolm Butler. This year is Big O up the middle as far as the defense go. And they got 1 or 2 D tackles that can get after you. I feel like last year y'all ran through that offensive line of ours, and it really just it made the entire offense stagnant.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know what? I'm gonna hit you with something because you did say the offense is really moving it. They're clicking. There's no doubt about that. But now you're going into Athens, and much is being talked about the crowd noise. You know, Kirby's even come out and said, "Hey, I want you guys loud and ruckus." And there's been a lot of teams that have come into Athens over the last 2 to 3 years that have really been affected by the crowd noise. Heck, Tennessee going to Pitt was affected by the crowd noise, and Pitt only had like 55,000. How will that crowd noise impact this Tennessee offense and that no huddle? Because it's predicated on that.
It is, but this is the thing. It's rhythmic. I will say that as far as the snap count goes. I honestly think they've been in hostile environments so far when it comes down to where they played at and how they've operated. The Pitt game was cool, but I still think they operated. One thing that got them on the road was just getting behind the sticks. They played at Pitt. They played at Death Valley. Where else have they been in on the road as far as this season goes? But they've had some hostile. I guess we got to go to Georgia, still South Carolina, and Vandy. Mm-hmm. In general, it's a matter of controlling the tempo. I think they understand what it's going to be. You know how coaches continually play it down when it comes to playing on the road. With the way this offense goes, it's one clap and go. And that's the disadvantage, too, to the defense because they're getting set so fast to where even if they got a rhythm, defenders have to run to the ball. And being that that's the case, whether they are one hand clap, because that's what you do now, one hand clap, or whether he's faking it, I still don't see much of a disadvantage being on the road in a loud environment. Everything they get is from the sideline. I'm not sure even how they're doing the protections when it comes down to the offensive line, whether it's 5-on-5 or whether they're zoning it. You don't really see them making many checks saying slide right, slide left. So the noise can be a factor because there's that 1 or 2 times where you hear a fake clap and, you know, or somebody mismanages what they hear, then you 1st and 15 then. But I won't say it won't be an issue, but they hadn't had many pre-play penalties either.
Let me ask you this. Tennessee runs the ball about 58% of the time. Mm-hmm. Just on paper and just me watching, you know, the strength of Georgia since Kirby got there, you know, in 2016, running the ball against their defense hasn't been, no matter who's been over there, hasn't been a good recipe.
Right.
How does Tennessee, you know, thrive against that? How does Tennessee combat that? Because you're gonna have to change it up.
Yeah, you are.
I mean, 58% run versus Georgia. You know, you're playing into their hand. Mm-hmm. So what does Tennessee have to do to beat that?
The one thing I think is a self-check on Georgia, though. You correct me if I'm wrong, but Kent State had a high-tempo type of offense, though, too. And that was the one team that kind of that gave you fits when it came down to, like, man, this team shouldn't be hanging around. Well, Kent State's a MAC team that I guess you can say have, like, lesser athletes in the sense of, like, what they have on their roster, although they put a lot of guys in the league, man. But you look at that tempo and you kind of say, if them big boys up front, them D tackles, linebackers also, if you get 4 yards and then you get another 3, I think that's the recipe. Like last year's group, to me, ain't this year's group when it comes down to the defensive line of Georgia. I think this pace.
No doubt. You got the number 1 pick. And you had another pick at 13.
You got 3 guys in the first round.
You get 3 guys in the first round. So you're absolutely right.
So and then this is the thing too about this offensive line. Jerome Carvin, okay, the left guard on this team, Cooper Mays, and Spraggins at right guard. Those 3 dudes up the middle, man, play with a lot of attitude. And I think they got bullied a little bit last year when it comes down to it. I watched this group this year, and it's been totally different. And you know OL play when you see it. You see them take on the identity of a guy. You see them being in the position of, look, it's our day. Nobody's taking our day. And they've taken that approach every single week I've seen them this year. It was times when I knew our O-line couldn't stick up to like other teams like a Bama or to a Georgia or to a Florida just off of strength. But even if you look at the Florida game and the LSU game, just for instance, they got high pedigree guys on that defensive line that they have. And every single one of them were ran into the ground by that tempo, by that pace. Even looking at the Kentucky line, they have a really good defensive line too. They have some guys that go early in the draft on their defensive front. And for the life of them, they couldn't catch their breath. You had, Stoops on the sideline going off because he thought somebody going off the field for us so they can change out the defense. That's because he needed to get subs in. It's either going to be – what Ole Miss did to us last year, which would be smart. Have your injury guy, right? So you can take the time out and change out the defensive front. And I think the way they have been grooving so far with that tempo, I just see it as a different outfit this year. And again, I know this to be true. Georgia got some dogs when it comes down to that. But if you got a steady offensive line, along with Gerald Mincy, who's a transfer from Florida, and Darnell Wright, who's made the SEC Lineman of the Week multiple times already. I'm thinking to myself, and he locked up Will Anderson. So I see a different confidence out of this group. They've actually become a unit.
George, I mean, he's really coming on here like he one of them Tennessee Vols that then came out the cave and want to talk all this noise and keep popping. It's kind of just irking me. But where's the weakness then? Where's the weakness on Tennessee? Because obviously Tennessee is going to march into Athens and just bully Georgia, the number 1 team in the country. But where's seriously?
Seriously?
The weakness, yeah.
The weakness is this: is if Hendon Hooker overthrows early. I've seen them have a tendency of letting the ball flare high. Okay, not getting good yards on first down, getting behind the sticks. Is a secondary for this team. Although they've been very opportunistic, they give up chunks. I legitimately look at our linebacker core and I say, Bowser, or what is it, Bowers? Bowers and just y'all tight end group. That's the one facet of this game to where I say, okay, you better bring your hard hat, because we even saw Kentucky leak out a tight end from the backfield and get a chunk player on us from a linebacker. I see that being an issue right there. Being able to sustain the same thing we've done week in and week out as far as outscoring people. That's a weakness too. As much as I'm talking about how efficient this offense has been, you get to a point to where you say, well, there's got to be a crack somewhere. That crack is getting behind the chains, not being able to run the ball, because Georgia's notoriously known for knocking folks back. And I worry about the secondary, primarily the corners, and also the linebackers covering these tight ends. And this is the issue too when it comes down to covering those tight ends. If you choose to go nickel, dime, quarter, heck, dollar defense, when it comes down to it, putting more DBs out there so you can stand toe-to-toe with them in the passing game, you get ate a lot. Because I know this to be true. That Georgia offensive line has been pushing out first-rounders for the last few years in a row. If not first-rounders, second and third-rounders, guys who are starting in their first year. So that's a strong weakness when you come into it. I'm a realist about it. That those tight ends and how they can run and how they can block, catch and how they can block, that right there is the ultimate X factor, because you guys can line up in almost any set and move them out, or have a tight end or have a linebacker in a very dumb situation. Because this is the thing too. Most college defenses, no matter how good they are, most college defenses have dumb guys on them, because it's not much you can teach a 18-year-old kid out there, or a 19-year-old for that matter. Pedigree only takes you so far.
Yeah, that's the one thing I worry about. We're going to have Nolan Smith missing. So it's going to be, it's just going to be somebody young in there taking his place. We're young anyway, so we get younger with him out of the game. That's one of the things I worry about, because it's going to take some intricacies, and it's going to take some things. Now, I'm sure they've been working on it for weeks. Yeah, they didn't just start this week. You can't just start this week working on Tennessee.
I'll say this too, since you say that
they've been working, but we still got some young guys on that defense, so they're gonna have to be dialed in.
I'll say this: when you say you don't just work on it the week of. I felt like last week in the Kentucky game, we were intentionally doing stuff for the Georgia game. They ran the ball more than I've ever seen them run the ball in situations when they usually don't. Why? Because Kentucky has a really good defensive line, and it's the idea that you have to be able to sustain drives against Georgia. And, again, that's the challenge right there. Can you get a first down? Can you get a second down, third and short? And this tempo offense, my brother went to the game last week against Kentucky. He said, man, why are these offensive linemen out here winded? I said, it's because they running the ball. I was like, no huddle is cool if you passing the ball. I was like, but we went like 8 plays in a row of straight runs. And, I know that'll tire out your OL. And they had to call a timeout for us.
Now, you're talking about – it's funny, it's cool you bring that up. You talk about running stuff, getting ready for the next team, getting ready for Georgia.
Yeah.
You bring up – I think when people bring up earlier games, like the Kent State game, I feel like Georgia put the bare minimum in that game.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, yeah, we can come out and put the smack down on them. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But why show our hand when there's no chance in losing that game?
Yeah.
That's real. I mean? So I think a lot of people bring up Kent State, but I'd be careful bringing up Kent State,
right?
And not you in particular. Just it comes up a lot, and they just don't know that. Monken he didn't throw the kitchen sink at Kent State.
You can't.
Kirby didn't throw the kitchen sink at Kent State,
or at Missouri, or at Vanderbilt, or any of those other teams.
And they know that they're a very young team. You got to put those guys out there, and get them reps, for this. Part of the season, because we're gonna need everyone.
Yeah.
If we're gonna win this thing again, we're gonna need everyone. You know what I mean? So,
can I ask you this in that? Mm-hmm. Who's been that challenge for you guys though? As far as legitimately, the Dogs being in a situation where they're battle tested and had to grind it out. Because if it wasn't Kent State and that was close, I don't know what Missouri was. I just don't.
It was at Missouri. Like I said earlier on your show, we lost Jalen
sure did.
Early.
Yeah, that's right.
He's a big part of what we do. You know what I mean? He's gonna be a top 5 pick. But I think since then we've gotten some kids with some experience.
Okay.
You see Barrett Alexander came in, and he's a really twitchy, interior guy that can give some pass rush and, some disrupt the run a little bit. So I feel like we'll be a little different team than what we were versus Missouri. We'll just be missing Nolan, though, which will be big.
Well, see, George, I'm going to answer that question differently. I don't think that we've actually we've been tested.
Yeah. And
I mentioned that before you came on, where the national narrative is that Georgia has been tested, but they really were like self-inflicted wounds. It was getting down into the red zone and stalling. Yeah. It was mixing and matching with the offensive line, which is young, coming back, trying to find out how Ratledge was going to be at right guard, if he was going to come back to being fully healthy. I don't think they've really been tested. I think the best that we saw Georgia, which was completely healthy, was Oregon when they dominated. Yeah. I mean, Monken dialed up anything and everything he wanted to dial up, whether it was tight ends, wide receivers, running backs. Georgia was doing whatever it wanted to do, but that's also the healthiest that they've been. Yeah. Now we're coming back to this team kind of having to rebuild itself. But that leads me to this question. What are your thoughts? Because, again, we're talking about national narrative. Yeah. What's your thoughts on Stetson Bennett at quarterback? Because to me, that's where this game comes down to. How effective he will be in the pocket and being able to actually move this offense against Tennessee's defense.
Man, to me, Stetson's playing with house money for the rest of his career. He walk into Athens, he shouldn't have to buy a drink, whatever job he want, he should be able to get it. Like, his confidence is through the roof. You see him moving around the pocket, and you say to yourself, this small guy is probably built like Bryce Young. But Bryce gets the nod because he's the pedigree, he's the 5-star and everything else. To me, I look at Stetson as almost the Mac Jones type, the guy that stayed around, stuck it out, fought through, learned everything he needed to know about this offense. To me, he is a scary entity that goes into that game because he has a never die type of attitude. Like, whether he's getting hit or whether he's extending plays, that to me is where what's his name from Ole Miss last year that got drafted to the quarterback from Ole Miss that got drafted to the Panthers. That's where God, dog, what is his name? That's where he kind of hurt us last year too. Right. Was being able to extend plays and get out of bad scenarios to where they could really make plays against us. That's where Matt Corral. My bad, I had to look that up. Yeah. Matt Corral. That's what we got ate up with him. And I feel like Stetson has that capability of being in that same position of extending plays. And when you got, again, those tight ends and, of course, young skill, I know that we don't really know their names just yet, but they're 5-stars. They're high pedigree guys that if you give them playmaking situations, they're going to make them. Stetson is an X factor to me. And his mobility is something that I don't think can be understated when you talk about what he's done for this offense. He knows everything about it.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, what's one of your best memories of this game? I mean, obviously you talked about your career and playing the Dogs. We're going to have some volunteer fans listen to the show. What's your biggest memory of actually playing against Georgia, whether it was playing inside the hedges or playing at Neyland Stadium?
Playing with inside the hedges. That 06 game, we weren't supposed to win. And was a juggernaut to the end, man. Being able to watch those guys from Atlanta or from the Georgia area come out of there with a dub, man, was by far one of the coolest things that I remember about it. Because we weren't supposed to win that one. You guys have been good, man, for a long time, and it's always been that like that. George and I was talking about that on my show earlier, like that Georgia or that Athens-Knoxville or that Atlanta-Knoxville connection runs so deep, whether we was down there trying to kick it or whether we had a bunch of dudes from the state of Georgia watching them kind of embrace winning, against the Dogs, or just knowing sometimes y'all was just that much better than us. Like watching a young guy like EB from Georgia, Eric Berry from Georgia. I'm going to say this, and I say this respectfully, knock Noshawn over to the side, and he just rolled over. You know what I'm saying? Or one of my guys that I even faced in the league, Danielle Ellerby.
He was real deal.
Yeah, or Danielle Ellerby, like creating friendships out of that too, to where like he was with the Ravens also, and I'm like, dog, I can't get away from you. You know what I'm saying? Those are the moments that I have when it comes down to that game, and Fulmer really painted that up to us, like the appreciation of what it means to beat Georgia and to go up against the best. Because like I said, no matter what or how good Florida was in that early 2000, what was that, 04 all the way up, you looked at Georgia and said, look, this means a lot for our team because recruiting is based on it. These guys got to go back home. They left the state to come to Tennessee. So watching them kind of embrace that, man, I'm huge on the appreciation of my teammates and where they from when they got to play against their folks like that. Because it's hard to come out of state like that sometimes.
All right, so you're not going to get off this show without a prediction.
Ooh.
What's your thoughts? What's your thoughts on this game on Saturday between the hedges? Number one against number one, because really we're the number one team in the country, but they're going to give it to you.
Y'all are. How did y'all feel about that? Let me ask you that on that side.
I'm not worried about it.
I don't care because we got to win anyway.
That was me.
If you're struggling, I probably feel different if
we were number 5, and I thought we should have been number 3 or something like that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You got to win anyway. You know what I mean? So, hey, so be it. Whatever the rankings are, they are.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just thought it was national narrative.
Yeah.
I mean, when you really look at this Georgia team, again, you look at it and you say they're supposed to blow out Missouri. They're supposed to blow out Kent State and Vanderbilt and all these teams. And then when you look at a Tennessee, I mean, you have to be honest. I mean, they're doing what they're supposed to do. They're kicking people's teeth in that they're supposed to kick their teeth in. I mean, you have the hiccup game against, I would say Florida, because I think Florida's down.
Florida.
And you were supposed to have that shootout with Alabama. You got Bryce Young who came back, and that was going to be a game of ages as well. So I just think it just came down to the optics of things and how Georgia has done things. But when you look at it, offensively, they've still been proficient. Defensively, they've still been very, proficient. They just had their own self-inflicted wounds. So
yeah.
So what's your prediction? What's your prediction?
I'm gonna be real. All right. I got Vols winning this one. But because as many upsides that we say on either side, I like our quarterback a little bit better. I like our receivers a little bit better too. I do in this one. Any other year, I'm like, boy, Georgia. And then this is the thing too. I know y'all are young defensively. And I'm wondering how that pace is going to get held down by a group that hadn't been in that situation before. I got us 38, Dawgs 35. And I like our special teams better.
Wow. Yeah. Okay.
Our kicker has been, let me knock on wood, man. Our kicker has been one of the most clutch guys, I feel like, in college football for a while, though, too, for a couple of years.
Okay.
What's y'all's? Y'all holding it till later?
We're going to hold it till later, but I'm going to tell you this. It ain't going to be Tennessee.
I think you're right on that.
I can't do that. I can't do that. But luckily, it ain't fool's gold. You know what I mean? Georgia's pretty good in their own right, so I don't feel any way about picking the Dogs in this one. You mentioned, I understand your reasoning. But, I wonder about the young defense too. What I do like about this game that plays into our favor and having a young defense is it's between the hedges.
Oh.
And they're gonna have that, that home crowd helping them out. You know what I mean? So it'll be a little different. And so I'm happy about that. You know what I mean? If it was up and even, I probably still pick the Dogs. Like who doesn't pick their undefeated team? You know what I mean? If you don't believe in your undefeated team, I don't know what you're gonna believe. But it's different at home when you got that crowd behind.
That's true, but we made Bama hurt from that too, the offsides and everything too that came behind it.
Mm-hmm.
I never asked y'all this though. What's the one strength that y'all like of Georgia?
Oh man, the coaching staff. I said that before. Yeah, I mean, I really believe this, and I went back and I looked at every game that Tennessee has played, and everybody's tried to match up with your receivers, which I think that's asinine. I mean, that's like death by 1,000, razor blades. That you can't do that. You can't match up man to man with these guys. Allow them to spread the field. I think one thing that Georgia has with Kirby, with Schumann, with Muschamp is so much experience of being able to come to the table and say, this is what we have to do with this team. You mentioned last year's team. 15 guys went to the NFL. That defense was legendary in Athens, not and nationally. But they still replace them with 5 stars. They still replace them with guys that got a lot of time last year. And I think that the strength of this defense is actually going to be up the middle. It's going to be those defensive tackles, those young guys that are defensive tackles. Also the linebackers and Mondon and Pop, but also the safeties. You got a lot of experience with the safeties. Malachi Starks is the freshman. He's the freshman, but still, he's got a lot of ability. When you talk about Chris Smith and his ability to be able to come up inside the box, kind of maybe spy at various times. I mean, there's a lot of things they can do. And I don't think Georgia tries to match up and go man-to-man with them. I think they mix it up a lot. I think a lot of cover 6, cover 9. I mean, a lot of things that kind of take away that gap. Exactly. Because, I mean, and it's funny that you mentioned Hooker earlier. He has thrown the ball high a lot of times.
It sells.
Yeah, it sells. And I think if Georgia is anticipating that, especially with the crowd noise and maybe some nerves. You can see a few turnovers from Hooker, but we'll see.
We got to come down with that ball. So
yeah,
you know what I mean. We need some turnovers for sure.
Yeah.
And I think you asked about a strength. I think it's an intricate defense. It probably doesn't look like it to the naked eye, but I've heard over the years that it's a lot. It's probably too much for young kids to come in and learn, but that's what they stick with. And I don't think opponents can duplicate that at their own practice. You know what I mean? And so I believe that becomes an advantage on Saturdays, not just versus Tennessee, versus any and everybody. I believe the ability, the way they've committed to the run lately, is going to slow down the game for one. Keep that Tennessee team offense off the field, which is, that would be a great thing to do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They ran the ball. They ran over Florida really good last week.
Yeah.
And so I anticipate them doing that again, or at least attempting to do that again, because, like I said, you want to keep that offense off the field. So that could be so basically old school football.
Yeah.
Play some sound defense and run the ball.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's going to be the key.
What's crazy is y'all can go through 10 different ways y'all can win it, and I feel like we can too. And I think that's a damn good matchup right there.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is.
You said it then. That's right. Because I believe Georgia surprised a lot of other people this year through the air.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I don't know what it I don't know what it looks like now, but for a while, Stetson had more. He had better stats than the Heisman.
Yeah.
Last year. You know what
Bryce.
I mean?
Yeah.
Bryce. You know what I mean? Georgia's been putting it in the air, so you know what I mean. So, like I said, there's a lot of different ways. Both of these teams can win the game.
Yeah. I heard y'all without maybe a starting tackle.
Well, Mims,
he's a swing tackle.
He's a swing guy.
He's he plays a good bit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Big old human.
Yeah, I know. He was the one that was in our investigation.
He might be 19 years old. These are some huge, cats. Might be down him. That's never a good thing. But hopefully, whoever's in there does what they're supposed to do.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it, man. This highest ticket by far all year long.
Yeah, man. It's bonkers.
The worst seat in the house costs more than my natty ticket.
Yeah.
Yeah, the worst seat. When I say that there's a 600 level at Georgia, and those tickets are, as of earlier today, they're about $600. I didn't pay that for my national champion ticket. I didn't come anywhere close.
Boy. Have y'all had a situation like this where Bama came into town and it's set like this as far as prices, or this just?
I don't know.
This is the highest ever. That's what they're saying.
This got to be the highest ever, but also it's times. But we've had, for me, the biggest matchup it probably was a Tennessee matchup my freshman year.
Yeah.
The natty year for Tennessee, it was a top 7 matchup. They drug us. You know what I mean? But that was a big, huge game. Game day was there.
Wow.
So it's like a reincarnation of that game. So it's gonna be huge. It's gonna be cracking up there.
Yeah.
Cracking.
Yes.
Hey Ramon, before you get off, I gotta hit you with this because obviously, you're with the Pittsburgh Steelers, still do a lot of radio work and got your own podcast and all that good stuff. We got our boy George Pickens. That's up there in Pittsburgh.
I met with George too. Solid cat, man.
What are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on him?
Chase Claypool getting traded is that means he's number one. And I think it was too many athletes in that room, that wide receiver room, to actually pick out who you're going to go for. Pittsburgh had Chase Claypool, Deontay Johnson, George Pickens, who's everybody been saying, Lord, please get this man the ball, okay? Pat Frymouth, who's going to potentially be a Pro Bowl type of tight end, or at least very solid in this league. And you got Najee that's catching the ball. I think the subtraction of Chase Claypool going to mean a real big role for George Pickens. And this is the thing, too. George and Kenny Pickett already got like a little small repertoire together. And I think, man, that kid going to be all right. He got, from my understanding, grow as his age a little bit more, okay? Like, be a pro, because Pittsburgh is a real blue-collar type city. I went up there for the Pitt game, and like they strategically set me at a table with Coach Tomlin and them and stuff like that to really give them some game and just letting them know, like, look, man, y'all do whatever y'all want to in your off time. But when it comes time of you in the city, you playing football, you got to be a pro because there's a level of expectation. I told George, I said, George, there's a dude that got broke off of your position every single era. Okay, Mike Wallace, Antonio Brown, Plexico Burress, Hines Ward. Like, I go through the list. Emmanuel Sanders left and went and got a bag somewhere else. Nate Washington left left and went to the top. I'm like, Martavis Bryant was on his way. I said, George, if you stick, follow the script. I said, you next. And he would tell you, we chopped it up and had a good little dinner that night. It's me, him, Mr. Rooney, Coach Tomlin, DeMarvin Leal, and a few of the young cats that was around. I guess they felt like needed some game. I like him. That dude, listen, if he sticks to the script, stay healthy, he can be one of those face guys at the NFL. I truly believe that, man. I like that young cat.
Well, I'll tell you this. I don't even know if you know, but I'm a Pittsburgh kid. I grew up in Pittsburgh. Family's had season tickets for 51 years, so I've seen every game you played in and all that good stuff, man. Yeah. You know, Coach T, who's dynamic. But, yeah, I mean, you hit it straight on the head, man. And I said that when George was actually drafted, it was the perfect place for him to go. That is nothing but like wide receiver heaven right now. Anybody that goes there, if you stick to the script, you're gonna ball out. You're gonna make your bag. And I'm glad he's actually doing.
And he's paired with a guy that got to grow up with him, and George Pickens. I mean, Kenny Pickett.
Kenny Pickett.
Yeah, I feel like if they grow up together, man, that could be that tandem. You like, yeah, that's cold blooded, man. That's Matt Ryan and Julio in the heyday.
How do you and we won't keep it too long. Just a short bit of how do you feel about Kenny Pickett? Do you feel like you don't have to tell me if he's going to be a Pro Bowler or a Hall of Famer. You don't go that deep, but do you believe he's a guy that could stick in Pittsburgh and be effective? Since you've been there, you've been through. You had been. You understood what he meant to the city, what he meant to the organization. Is he a type of guy that can be that type of figure at quarterback for Pittsburgh?
As long as he don't try to chase Ben's shadow. And I think that's where guys sometimes fall off the boat with trying to, let me be the next him. No, like Kenny Pickett be you. Do I think he's capable of that? Yeah, because this is the other part. I know he got joked about his small hands at the combine and stuff like that, but he's played in that weather. He understands that city. I watched him in his, I think, 4 or 5 starts he's had, stand in the pocket. I've seen him challenge guys out on the field in a respectful way. I've seen him kind of call out guys like, hey, we need to bend our playbook a little bit better. I've seen him take responsibility. I've watched him make plays with his legs, which almost every quarterback in the league does these days. And I've seen him make passes that you kind of say to yourself, that has it. And I've also seen him throw picks to where I'm just like, I love the competitive spirit of what you did, but in that sense, you didn't need to pull out the cake then. Just take that check down, move over, give your defense a better opportunity to defend the field. And I've seen him make those adjustments, man. So I'm looking forward to watching this kind of grow into something better. And I say this too, the other part of it, if he gets an offensive line to protect him. Because I think that's one of the things that another fellow Georgia alum went through, Matt Stafford in Detroit. Like if they get him a decent offensive line, I think Kenny Pickett can be very, very solid in this league. Whether that's all pros, Pro Bowls, we'll see. He got enough weapons around.
It don't take all that, you just gotta be good enough.
Yeah. Yep. 100%. I like it.
Well, Ramon, we ain't gonna keep you, man. We're gonna let you get up out of here. But before you do, let the fans know exactly where they can hear more material from you, especially the Steeler fans that are also listening.
Absolutely, man. I got DK Pittsburgh Sports on his YouTube page, but it's my show, the Ramon Foster Show. I do that Monday through Friday. It's enough that you can listen to them on your workouts. It's about 20 to 23 minutes long daily. Social media is Ramon Foster on Twitter, at the Ramon Foster on IG. And if you're in the Nashville area or streaming, I got a radio show here I do Monday through Friday, also from 6 to 10 a.m. Central. Ramon, Kayla, and Will. We covered the Titans, college football, pro ball, and everything else. So we're the Titans flagship. So we cover them mostly, in the Vols, of course.
All right, bro. We're gonna let you get up out of here, but I appreciate you coming on and
no doubt
blessing the show with some Tennessee information.
And understand, this weekend, my heart is very respectful to y'all. What I tweet, don't take that, okay?
you know I'm gonna be on it. So hey, don't worry about it. You know, I welcome it, and because you know I'm gonna do my thing.
I already know it. That's why I got to get my shots now.
Man, it's over. We're going to lay that wood. That's all we're going to do. We're going to lay that wood.
Oh, all right. We'll see. We'll see.
All right.
All right, fellas.
All right, man.
Yep. No doubt. Appreciate y'all having me.
Yes, sir.
No doubt. Appreciate you coming.
No doubt.
All right, George. That was Ramon Foster. No relation, right?
No relation, but we tell people that we cousins. You know what I mean? Hey,
the way it always is.
Got to be cousins.
Got to be. Somehow, some way, you got to be connected, right? But a lot of good information, man. I love when we're able to bring somebody on that's really intimate with their team. You know, we had Takeo on earlier with the Auburn game, and but it's always nice when you could talk to different ex-players that love and enjoy their team, still follow it in-depth, give an in-depth analysis. And like he said, you were already on his show. But, I mean, I like some of the things that he was able to speak upon. But when it really comes down to it, I think, just like he mentioned, for everything, every positive you could throw out there about Georgia, they think that they can negate it. I look at it for us, for every positive they throw out there about Tennessee, we can negate it. And he did mention, as I mentioned earlier, you know, I thought that one thing that Georgia is going to be able to do, they're going to be able to utilize that balanced offense. They're going to be able to keep them off guard. They're going to be able to keep them off their mark. I think the utilization of the tight ends is going to be huge. I think they're going to bury Tennessee's linebackers in the utilization of those tight ends. And then at the same time, I think defensively, it's just going to be one of those things where it's going to be a lot of mixing and matching. You ain't going to see a lot of straight man-to-man like a lot of these teams have done. I mean, that is truly a death by 1,000 razor blades. That's all you see is them just dinking and dunking. Nobody has really mixed it up, but you do see Hooker get into some situations, some bad ones, when they're able to apply a blitz, and like Ramon talked about it, Pitt blitzed and blitzed and blitzed until their defensive tackles went down. But we got Graham Coffey to just join the show. Graham, we want to hear your analysis because you've been doing film work, been on shows. You got any swag bags from anybody? I mean, what's going on?
Didn't know we were going to have Graham today. That's great. That's great. Graham gets all in depth with it, with the numbers and all that stuff.
Yeah, man, I need to hear some numbers.
Man, yeah, I liked what you were just saying about the tight ends versus their linebackers. You know, Bama had a lot of success throwing to the running backs in this game when they played the Vols. They targeted their backs 10 times, 8 catches for, I think, 78 yards by their running backs, lots of first downs. You know, I think Latu, like his best game of the year, came against Tennessee. I think he had 90 yards against them.
Bartholomew from Pitt, over 90 yards, 2 touchdowns against Tennessee.
Right. And so when you kind of look across the defense for Tennessee, Trayvon Flowers, their safety, number 1, struggles at times with his run fits, struggles at times in pass coverage. He's not a bad player, but he's not a elite player. You know, like there's spots all across where I think Georgia can take advantage of Tennessee. And really, in my mind, like the big miss on sort of the narratives for this game has been everyone talking about there's a great Tennessee offense against a great Georgia defense. And no one's really talking about there's a great Georgia offense against a average to subpar Tennessee defense, right? And so I am not worried at all. What'd you say, George?
He said he has.
There you go. Yeah, exactly, man. Like,
it's obvious. It's pretty obvious.
Yeah, like Georgia, if the defense has a good day, like Georgia can win this game, a lot of different ways. But like if Georgia has to go score points with Tennessee, I don't think that's the end of the world. And a lot of people I think are acting like it is, but I look at this game, and as much as Tennessee spreads it out and they put these wide receivers on the edges, you turn on that Bama film and they're playing a lot of heavy sets, man. Like they're using their tight end as an H-back, and what they did against Bama was they got 5 yards a pop. Every time they got that first down of the series, they hurried to the line. They handed off on a halfback ISO play straight up the middle, and they get 5, 6, 7 yards. And if Jalen Carter's sitting there, I don't know if they can do that, man. Like Cooper Mays is a nice player, but he's not a great player. Georgia wanted his brother, but they didn't want him when it was time to recruit. So, right. George knows this better than any of us, right? But like, yeah, this is a spread offense, and it's the Baylor system that Bryles, started down there in Waco all those years ago. But like, at the end of the day, this is still an SEC football game, and SEC football games are won in the trenches. And, I think like, you saw what Georgia did to that Florida offense last week when they were locked in and motivated. And I think they can, I'm not saying they're going to shut Tennessee down entirely, but I think they can hold Tennessee into the 20s.
I believe that too. If Tennessee has gotten that much better, I don't believe they've gotten 30 more points better than Georgia. What, they scored 17 last year? Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So, I don't see it being like that much different. I could be wrong.
I agree. Yeah, and in that game last year, Georgia kind of played a lot of like red zone roulette, right? Like, okay, we're going to keep things in front of us. We're not going to allow the explosive, 60-yard touchdown play. And if you do pop a 20 or 30-yard play on us, we're going to tackle you and we're going to make you play us in the red zone. And I've heard a lot this week about Tennessee, they have scored a touchdown this year every time they have had a first and goal situation, which is really impressive. But like the statistical side of me, the nerd analyst side of me, like looks at that and says like, the variance tells me that's not sustainable. Like in a way, that's almost good news for Georgia because a streak like that just doesn't continue. And I don't know, the comparisons to Tennessee and 2019 LSU are outlandish in my opinion. That was a team that had 14 draft picks. This Tennessee team has some nice pieces, but no team with less than 50% blue chips on their roster has ever won a national title. Georgia is a 79% blue chip ratio team, and Tennessee is a 31% blue chip ratio team. Like
that matters.
Yeah, it especially matters in the fourth quarter.
Well, you know what, Graham? What's funny is that, and I did bring up that at the beginning of the year, I said Tennessee would be that juggernaut, right? I said that would be that team that would really step up in the East and not necessarily challenge Georgia or take the East or something like that, but would actually be a team that could cause some challenges, right? The only difference really, and George brought this up, he said they're not 30 points better than 17 points last year. They're just more efficient. It's the same offense. They're more efficient. You got Hendon Hooker, who's now under center, who's the quarterback running that ship. He knows the offense in and out. And I personally think even going into Athens with the noise, and we brought this up with Ramon, he didn't think it would be that much of an issue, but with the noise, being able to throw them off their mark, I don't think they're going to be as efficient as they have been, which allows his defense and Kirby and Schumann and Muschamp to really dial up a lot of different things that are going to cause some missed looks by Hooker. So, and he hasn't actually been all that accurate in a lot of different throws that he's thrown the football as well. Even some of these long touchdown passes, he's missed the mark a lot of times, and I think Georgia's going to take advantage of that.
Well, and if Georgia can stop the run with regularity, I'm not saying they got to stop it every time, but if they, if they're winning those battles more often than not on first and second down, that puts Tennessee in a third and long. And Hooker's weakest range as far as his accuracy is 10 to 19 yards. His adjusted completion is 58.5%. A little, to give you some perspective, Stetson's adjusted completion on 10 to 19 yards is up around 66%. And that's not to say that, Hooker is bad in that distance, but what really pops out when you watch what Pitt did against them versus what Bama did against them is Pitt played inside leverage all day. And they just said, we know that you want to throw these slants and these crossers over the middle, and we're taking it away. And Tennessee adjusted, and they made some plays outside the hashes. But, in that game, Hooker threw 10 balls over 20 yards, and he completed 3 of them, but only 2 of those attempts were between the numbers, and both of those were incompletions. And you turn on that Bama tape, and it's they got guys running free up and down the hashes, in the seams all day long. Yeah. And so I think that's, Ringo and Lassiter, for as much as, we've kind of worried about Ringo, what he's really good at is getting hands on somebody and forcing them to the sideline. And if Hendon Hooker hits that throw over and over into a basket from, 40 yards opposite hash to the sideline, then you tip your hat and you say, good job, kid, but there's not anybody that really does that all day long. And I think for Georgia, it's just when he played a defensive line he respected in Pitt, you saw him, and it was every time that first read wasn't open, his eyes go down and he wants to
took
run.
off. Exactly.
Yeah. And Pitt, did a really good job of kind of, not getting too far upfield, especially with their interior linemen. They were waiting there for him more often than not with their arms wide open to tackle him. I think that's a lot of what Georgia has to do in this game. And I think, if you can cover his first read on 50+% of those pass plays that they have on Saturday, and you can make sure that, you're not leaving him lanes to break the pocket and run. If he's going to run on you, then he's got to run outside the tackle box. That's got to be your rule on Saturday. If he wants to try and race one of your linebackers or, your defensive backs to the sideline, fine. Give him those 4 yards, but don't let him step up and have a lane, right off of the left guard or something and all of a sudden head out and he's got, 15, 18 yards of green grass.
Facts.
But it's not like George just said, it's not a new offense. Heupel has been running it a long time. And, Georgia went to Missouri in 2018. A lot of people might not remember this game. And that was I think a 42-29 football game, but Mizzou put up a lot of points on them that day. And, that was Heupel was the offensive coordinator, and they had Drew Lock, and they really strained Georgia's defense. And Kirby Smart doesn't just give up 29 points to anybody and move on. So there was a lot of thought and study and bringing other people in from that Bryles tree that next offseason. And so, I think Georgia and Kirby, they've kind of had a different recipe for this offense, since well before just this Saturday. They don't have to cook up some new game plan. This is the same stuff.
Exactly. Well, Ramon gave us 38-35 Vols, obviously. He's going to go with his Tennessee Vols. Okay. What are your thoughts, prediction on the game? Give us a score.
Yeah, so, the big red flag for me is Vegas opened this line on Sunday at 9. 93% of the money so far has been put on Tennessee, and it only got down to 8. I've seen it bounce back up to 8.5 at some books. Mm-hmm. What that tells me is Vegas is terrified to hang Georgia -7 in this game. They want this 2-possession spread. And, I think Tennessee, they are – the value on Tennessee is outsized because they beat Alabama. And the reality is that Alabama is not what, what we've come to know them as over the last decade and a half. This is probably the worst defense they've had since 2007. And I look back at that game and, Tennessee gets a muff punt inside Bama's 30, and then they get 150 yards of penalties.
Exactly.
Their average touchdown drive, I think this year has been about 70 yards. So that's basically 2 touchdown drives worth of penalties and, a freebie on your 30, and they put up 52, right? Which is impressive, but I think probably, the more appropriate spot for them to be that day is maybe, closer to 38 or something, right? So, I think Georgia's defense will be good on the money downs and the big moments, and Tennessee will make some plays. They'll move the ball, but I just don't think their defense can stop Georgia's offense, man. Like, Georgia's played better defenses than this and had a pretty easy go of it. And and Georgia played Oregon. I know this Oregon team might be different now, but that's the most similar system they've seen to this, and they handled it quite well. And I think the reason they did is because they had experience with Tennessee last year. So that's all a long way of saying, I could see this being a close game for a while and Georgia kind of pulls away, but man, the disrespect with the rankings and just all the talk, Georgia's going to be really, I think, in a very good and focused headspace for this game. And the playbook for Georgia will be open in a way that we have not seen it be open all year. Maybe I'm wrong, man, but I really think this kind of is all lined up for a rout. I think Georgia's going to put up somewhere in the 40s, and it wouldn't shock me at all if they're into the low to mid 50s by the end of the day.
Wow. So what's your score? Give us a prediction.
I'm going to go Georgia 45, Tennessee 21.
Wow. George, what you got? I think.
I had it muted. 45-28.
45-28. All right.
Oh, man. Thinking in the same neighborhood.
I'm actually going to go 34-26. I feel like you do. I really feel that Georgia can really have this game in hand. I trust Kirby. I put a tweet out there the other day. I trust him more than I trust this team. If it was last year's defense, it's a wrap. This year's defense, a little bit younger. They have to do a little bit. It's going to be a little bit different to get the results that you want to get. It's not going to look the same as it looked as dominating last year. But I look for Pop to kind of have a great day. Mon didn't have a great day. And also the Smiths, they have a great day on defense. But yeah, 34-26. I don't think you completely shut down Tennessee, but I'm not sure how close it will be with that 34-26, if you know what I mean. It could be somewhere around
back door or something.
Yeah. But regardless, I think the Dogs come out on top. They come out on top.
I feel like they get in a position where I feel like Tennessee's going to be in a position where they can't run the ball as effectively as they've been running it, and they're going to force Hendon to make some plays that he can't make, and we're going to come up with some balls.
I agree with that. I think, Georgia did what they did to Florida last week despite being -3 in the turnover battle. This Florida team, they played Tennessee to a 5-point game. Had a chance to
crazy, right?
Right, dude.
You don't beat anybody by 22 points being -3. That doesn't happen. That's usually you lose that game, let alone win by 22.
Yeah, I mean, what I was going to ask is, do you guys feel like I do that if Stetson Bennett plays a clean game, Georgia could just run them out of the stadium?
Oh, I definitely believe that. I brought it up. I brought it up all week. I think Stetson is really the key to this game. I mean, he's been up and down the last few weeks. He's had a couple high throws. He's been a little bit inaccurate. And I brought this up with Ramon as well, because he said, how do we feel about Georgia coming in as the number 3 ranked team in the college football playoffs? And I thought it was basically based off of national narrative of looking at the optics of how they have gotten the victories. They've still won. They still are a juggernaut on offense whenever they want to be a juggernaut on offense. It's just been self-inflicted wounds. If Stetson plays clean, there's no team in the country that can beat them because they have too many weapons running the football. The utilization of the tight ends. I mean, Ramon talked about it. You can line those tight ends up anywhere you want on the offensive formation, and it's going to be a mismatch. You can line them up on a DB, on a safety, on a line. It's going to be a mismatch. And now that the running game is really getting effective and it's really doing what it's supposed to be doing, you got Edwards running the ball effective. You got Branson, who's actually going to give you a lot of carries. You got Kendall, who knows how many carries he'll have this week. But then you got Kenny Mack, who can do similar things as Cook did last year, just a little bit different version. But he's still an effective, running back out of the backfield. As long as Stetson's clean and this offensive line plays clean, I don't think there's a shot that Tennessee has.
I'm with you. Yeah, and I mean, I just think, if the turnover margin in this game is even or favors Georgia, I don't know how Tennessee wins. I really don't. Maybe I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but it's just, I don't know. This game feels a lot like, when Georgia was going to play in the Natty last year.
Yeah.
I picked them to win 34-17. Everybody thought I was, riding the rock or something. But it's just the narrative is so far away from what happens when you really go up and down the roster. And if you judge them off the Bama film, you think they're a juggernaut, and then you see they're not really scheming guys open. They're
taking what the defense gives them.
Yeah, they got 15-yard free releases, and
exactly
half the secondary is playing man, the other half is playing zone, and nobody knows what's up from down.
Exactly. If you look at it, I mean, literally, they are going up the seam or down along the sideline. Hooker's thrown it deep. It's a quick slant, or it's the halfback draw. That's what they're doing. And if Hooker if he doesn't find, like you said, his first read, he puts his head down and he's taking off and he's running. I mean, that's really it's not hard to find out what they are.
Well, it's just I don't know how replicable that is. Even that LSU game, they get the 11 o'clock kickoff, which is a gift from the heavens in Tiger Stadium. Which is good for them. They took advantage of it, but first play of the game, LSU fumbles the opening kickoff. They get the ball on the 25, and even with all the short fields they had that day, they really weren't that good in the red zone. I mean, they had to kick a lot of field goals. So, yeah, I just you take the 51 against Bama out of it, and you're like, well, they put up 38 on Florida. They put up 27 on Pittsburgh in regulation. They put, what was it? I think 40 up on LSU.
40, yeah.
But while being, I think plus 3 or 4 in turnovers.
Yeah. I challenge anybody to go back and look at that Pitt game. Like you mentioned, Pitt was the only team that really shaded these guys on the inside and had the ability of those defensive tackles to actually pressure and get pressure up front. And that's what Narduzzi and his defense is really known for, that defensive front and utilization of the linebackers, being able to blitz those A gaps. And that's what they did. I mean, they caused a lot of issues. And even looking at that Florida game, Bernie did a lot of that as well. They were able to take them off their mark a little bit more than other teams have been able to. The Alabama game, as you mentioned, is no barometer. Alabama's not the same team, just isn't. And you could tell it doesn't matter. They just are not. So,
no, you're right.
Yep.
To be close in that game with 150 yards of penalties, that tells you something about Tennessee.
Mm-hmm.
Facts. Well, guys, it's been a heck of a night. I know everybody is getting worn down by all the Vol talk. I mean, they're driving me crazy on social media. No matter where you go, they're around all of a sudden. They came out their caves, and, hopefully we'll kick that last tooth out this weekend in Athens. But anything else you guys want to say before we get up out of here? Any shout-outs?
Be loud.
Man, I'm ready to go to the game Saturday, man. I haven't been excited in a minute since probably the Natty.
Oh, yeah. You're going to have a blast, man.
Well, I'm going to tell you what, I'm going to give a quick shout out. You know, obviously, folks, continue to go out there, support Dawg Central. You got our guy, Graham Coffee, who blessed the show, obviously. My God, a podcast, John Tweet Sports, Phil Street Forum for all your go-to on recruiting. Trigger Trey out there with the videos. And, of course, our guy, Mitch Pike, who takes care of our creative design. Subscribe, listen, follow, do all those things on all of our platforms that we have, anywhere that you can listen to podcasts, YouTube, Instagram, no matter where we're at, follow us and follow everybody. So with that being said, let's get up out of here. Go Dogs.
Go Dogs.
Thank you for listening to the 100 Sanford podcast. Tune in weekly to hear fresh content from the 100 Sanford podcast every Thursday, but also with some pop-up shows every now and then as news breaks. You can also follow the content on our website, www.100sanfordpodcast.com, and email us at dogs@100sanfordpodcast.com. Lastly, reach out to us on social media streams. For Twitter, it's @100Sanford, but on IG, TikTok, Facebook, and other accounts, it's 100 Sanford Podcast. All right, folks, that's it. And as usual, see you at 100 Sanford.